What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here, and today we're going to have a video of actual live gameplay from an in-person tournament. So this is footage from Supershowdown Poznan. I'm going to pronounce a lot of things wrong, I think, in this series because this tournament was held in Poland, and Poland is an area that has traditionally been very strong in the card game world, or at least in some games that I've played in the past, and they I think they lived up to their reputation by having the first really big in-person tournament, the Super Showdown. And this was hosted by a store called Sklad Gear. My apologies if I mispronounced that. And there was a stream of it, but it seems like the audio for the stream was lost. And insofar as there was commentary, I suspect that it was in Polish anyway. So I'm going to be doing some videos where I take the footage with no audio from their stream, and I'm going to add some English commentary. So hopefully that will be helpful to the viewers. And yeah, let's get into it. For the first match, we have a match between Daniel on the left playing Boba green, and Dawid on the right playing Krennic green. And both players are using the ECL, which I think is fairly standard at this point. Probably is the best base in the game. Um, yeah, so let's get into it. And I am running this footage slightly sped up here. I think we are at 1.25x to make the gaps in play a little shorter, just because, we are doing an in-person event and there's more time spent shuffling, searching cards, and so on. I may change that if it seems like I can't keep up, but yeah. So both players are resourcing at the start here. A little thoughts on this matchup. Um, Boba Green needs to be the aggressor against Krennic Green. So Krennic is the control, Boba is the beatdown. Krennic's endgame is going to be significantly stronger than that of Boba, but Boba has the ability to put some pressure on early with powerful units, and then hopefully try to close out with cards like Fett's Fire Spray. Dawid opens up with Colonel Yularen, while Daniel plays a Crafty Smuggler here. So Colonel Yularen's a 2-cost 2/3, and when you play it or another command unit, you heal one from your base. Doesn't do anything right now. Crafty Smuggler is a 2/2 shielded. All right, so we're moving into the next turn here. And in this situation, it seems to me that Daniel probably wants to be trying to push damage to base, and David wants to try and keep the board clear. So it seems like the initial moves here play into that, with Colonel Yularen attacking into the Crafty Smuggler, removing its shield, and I think there's a good chance that we'll see the Crafty Smuggler hit the base here for 2 damage. Actually, I think I'm essentially certain, both because of the strategic factors that I considered and because I already recorded this video and it got bugged, so I've already seen this part. Um, so not so much a prescient forecast as much as me already having been familiar with this. Now, both players here play Super Laser Technicians, which is really interesting. The thing about Super Laser Technician is it helps you ramp up. Neither player has opted to use the ECL here, even though in both cases they could have used Super Laser Tech with ECL to defeat an opponent's unit and get that resource early. However, it seems like maybe there wasn't that much to be done with the resource. So Dawid has the initiative here. It seems very likely that what we'll see is the Super Laser Technician swinging into one of Daniel's units. Interestingly, I do think there was a missed trigger there. Playing that Super Laser Technician, that is a command unit, and it should have triggered Colonel Yularen's healing to remove one of the damage from Dawid's base, but it looks like that was missed. The Super Laser Tech takes out the Crafty Smuggler, and Daniel decides to have his own Super Laser Tech take out Colonel Yularen. So the board is now totally empty, and both players have gone up to 5 resources. I have to say, all things considered, things could be a lot worse for Dawid at this point. I think that going into the leader deployment turn, only having taken 2 damage against an opponent who is supposed to be taking the aggro role, that seems like a relatively strong position to be in. Now, I do think we see a surprise strike in hand there from Daniel, maybe. Could lead to an early defeat for Krennic. We see Gideon Hask, Vader, Takedown, and a overwhelming barrage. Krennic swings in, defeating the Viper probe droid and taking 3 damage. This means that it should be relatively easy for Boba to defeat Krennic now, but insofar as that happens, there is the risk of that takedown coming out to clear Boba. Boba deploys, and in this situation with the base at full HP, you really do want to clear out Krennic simply because if you do not do so, you are going to be in a bit of trouble, as at that point the restore is going to be severely hampering your options. So we do see the ECL used here, bringing out Gideon Hask and inflicting 5 damage on Boba, Gideon himself taking 4 damage. This would be a great situation for an overwhelming barrage for Daniel, but it looks like he does not have one at this time. Opts to just swing into the base for 4 and ready 2 resources. This allows him to play Bosk, and Bosk ambushes and defeats Krennic. So we now have 3 severely wounded units on the board. Boba at 2 HP, Bosk at 2 HP, and Gideon Hask at 1 HP. So Gideon is a 5-cost 5/5, and when an enemy unit is defeated, you can put an experience unit on a friendly unit you control. And the important thing about that is a friendly unit you control. It is not another friendly unit you control. So Gideon can actually buff himself. And we see an overwhelming barrage, but not from Daniel. It's Dawid who gets the barrage, scoring both kills there with Gideon, with Bosk and Boba both removed. And then we see 2 experience given to Gideon, represented by a die, making him a 7/7. And Daniel ambushes Gideon with a strafing gunship. But this is actually a huge misplay because it does get Gideon up to 7 damage, but the problem is with Gideon's temporary HP from overwhelming barrage, he's still alive. And additionally, he gains another experience from defeating the gunship, which means that he doesn't actually even die at the end of the turn. So really a major misplay, I think, from Daniel. May not have realized that interaction with the temporary HP and with the experience. Interestingly, it looks like David forgot to actually put the experience on there. So technically, I think if they were playing with like strict rules enforcement, that would be a missed trigger and Gideon would actually die. But it seems that in this case they allowed it, or maybe I just missed that number being changed on the die. Not entirely sure. It's kind of hard to see the result of the die or the numbers on the dice at this resolution, and with the dice being a little reflective. In any case, we see a Waylay removing that Gideon only for him to be immediately replayed, and Daniel takes the initiative. So Daniel is really falling behind as a result of this Gideon Hask. Um, the Getting the double kill on Boba and Bosk and going up to 7/7, and then with the unfortunate strafing gunship play, bringing him up to 8. That was a nasty situation. We're having a little trouble with the old camera there. Not entirely sure what's going on, but I am going to switch off the face cam for now, and we will continue there. This does allow you to see the Sklad Gear logo, which I was hiding with my face cam there, not intentionally, just that's where the face cam spot tends to be. And a big shout out to Sklad Gear for hosting this event. Um, Meanwhile, we see Daniel play a cell block guard, only to have it hit by Darth Vader commanding the First Legion, 7-cost ambush unit, 5/7, and allows you to search your top 10 cards for up to three resources of villainy units when played, and ultimately does so and finds a seasoned shore trooper, defeats Boba, 3 experience given, or I'm sorry, not 3 experience, 3 damage given back. I think I said defeats Boba, defeats the cell block guard. Boba Disintegrator is then played, Gideon has given one experience to himself. So Daniel has a pretty unfortunate scenario here. I believe he has more damage on his base. It's hard to tell, but it looks like he has 16 damage on his base and his opponent has 4. Additionally, we see the Gideon as a 6/6, Vader as a 5/4, and the 4/3 Snow Trooper Lieutenant, all pretty dangerous. Boba uses Overwhelming Barrage, defeats Vader, and puts a damage on Gideon. Avenger hits the field, clears Boba, and that's a concession from Daniel. Yeah, Dawid really got in control there. I think the key moments were Dawid having the barrage and Daniel not, so that we end up seeing Gideon getting the double kill on Boba and Bosk. And we also see that same Gideon surviving after the strafing gunship misplay. That was that's kind of a tricky interaction. I can easily see why someone would make that mistake, but I think it was pretty costly because not only did it use the ECL, um, it not only did it use the ECL, it didn't stop Gideon, and in fact, it actually buffed him to an extent. Simply playing that strafing gunship without using the ECL would have been a better move, as uh, it would have enabled the gunship to take Gideon out in the next turn. But, sometimes mistakes do happen, especially so early in a game. And honestly, it would be pretty easy to make that mistake, in my opinion. Looking at that and seeing, oh, 3 damage, that will defeat this guy, only to have the temp HP keep it alive, and then the when defeated trigger for the experience, keeping it alive even longer. So tough scenario there. Let's see whether Daniel can make the comeback here and win the second round after both players have done some sideboarding. So once again, in terms of overall matchup thoughts, I do think this is a matchup where our Boba player is going to want to be our Boba player is going to want to be aggressive, and our Krennic player is going to want to play control. In the last game, it seemed like Dawid was really able to slow down Daniel's aggression and ultimately take control of the game. Um, but things could easily go different after some sideboarding, and Boba definitely has a lot of tricks that can really put damage on the board and threaten the opponent. So in particular, there are cards like in particular, you have cards like uh, surprise strike. That can be a nice, very straightforward bit of surprise damage. There are some other things that can be used as well. So in addition to surprise strike, Fett's fire spray can be some nice surprise damage. Now, we lead off here with Viper Probe Droid, and it reveals an interesting thing. There are 2 super laser techs in Dawid's hand. And this is a very unconventional move, in my opinion, because the value of ramp in this game decreases a lot once you've ramped into your leader. And because Krennic deploys at only 5 resources, playing more than one ramp card in a Krennic deck is, in my opinion, kind of unorthodox, because once you get Krennic on the field, any further ramp that you play is now, it might be accelerating you towards your late game units, but it's not accelerating you towards a leader deployment, and that's a lot less valuable. So in this situation, having the super laser tech on the first super laser tech allows Krennic to come out sooner, but the second super laser tech does not. However, Dawid has decided to keep both super laser techs. In this, he also does not use his ECL to ambush the Viper with the super laser tech and prevent some incoming damage, which he could have done. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how he plays this. I think we did see an Avenger at the end of the last game. It's possible that Dawid has enough like heavy endgame units that he wants to have another super laser tech anyway. In this case, he swings in with the super laser tech, clears the Viper probe droid. I think this is probably a minor error in that I think that defeating Greedo would be more useful, as it would negate Greedo's when defeated. Um, Both Greedo and the Viper could be defeated in one attack by that super laser tech, but Greedo has a when defeated ability that can damage enemy units. And so using the super laser tech to clear Greedo when there aren't any other ground units for him to potentially damage would be a good way to ensure that his ability is wasted. Regardless, though, the game moves on. We see Dawid deploying Director Krennic. Daniel counters with no good to me dead, exhausting Krennic. Um, and then interestingly we see the ambush there. Yeah, so Dawid did not ambush with ECL the first time, but he does do so this time with his second super laser tech. And Daniel goes for the top deck but misses. Let's see what else he might have. It does look like there's maybe it looks like there's maybe a surprise strike, maybe a Rook in hand, and I'm not sure about the third card. Looks like Daniel doesn't have another play. Even though he was able to gain a resource from that super laser tech being defeated with Boba Fett's leader ability, he did not have any 3 resource card to play out. So he did manage to suppress Krennic and do some damage that turn, but his board isn't looking the strongest. On the other hand, he will soon have Boba on the field in order to try and change that. And interestingly, it looks like he may have resourced the Surprise Strike. Surprise Strike would be a fairly strong card. And he plays Boba and is immediately greeted by Power of the Dark Side. This is one of the nastiest things that I think can happen there, losing Boba immediately. He then plays a Steadfast Battalion. Probably he'd been hoping to ambush that with ECL, and then another Power of the Dark Side clears that one too. So incredibly negative turn for Daniel, with not only his leader being defeated, but his powerful Steadfast Battalion being defeated as well. And Dawid must be pretty happy with those outcomes. We do see Fett's Fire Spray taking the field, and while those Power of the Dark Side plays were very impactful, Dawid now does not have another one of those cards to counter Fett's Fire Spray. And I'm wondering whether using ECL against Greedo in the previous turn was in part a way to line up Power of the Dark Side in order to ensure that the board was clear. Um, so now we see Darth Vader hitting the field. So Vader is an ambush unit and doesn't have anything to ambush in the ground arena. The only unit that Daniel has is this Fett's Fire Spray that he played out. But Vader does get to search for another unit and brings out a Cell Block Guard. This does mean that any ambushes that Daniel might activate would have to go into the Cell Block Guard instead of Krennic or Vader. So, for instance, Rook Ambush with the Energy Conversion Lab is not able to take out Vader here because the Cell Block Guard protects him. Fett's Fire Spray swinging in for 5 damage, and Director Krennic counters by swinging in for 2 and healing 2. So in this situation, Daniel is significantly ahead when it comes to life totals. But Dawid's board is significantly just swing for the fences here and don't interact with each other. Then we would see Fett's Fire Spray dealing 5 damage in a turn, and Dawid's setup dealing 10 damage in a turn and healing 2. So Daniel is substantially behind here, and probably by enough that his early lead is not necessarily going to get him the win. He's got to figure out some other stuff. So good play here by Dawid, swinging with the Cell Block Guard first. So the reason that you do this is because with Sentinel, the Cell Block Guard has to be the first target of an attack. So if there is an ambush play like a Bosk or something with ECL, it has to take out the Cell Block Guard. And for that reason, even though Krennic or Vader are better attacks than the Cell Block Guard, you want to use the worst attack first to prevent your opponent from neutralizing it. And indeed, that's Daniel ends up playing Bosk and ambushing the Cell Block Guard. So if Dawid had attacked with one of his stronger units, he would have missed out on the 3 damage to base that the Cell Block Guard provided. Bosk countered by a Death Trooper here, and it looks like that's the organized play Death Trooper from the promo packs. So cool looking card there. and does 2 damage to Bosk to defeat him, and then the other 2 damage actually heads to Director Krennic instead of the Death Trooper, which means that Krennic is now a 3/5, benefiting from his own passive ability. And we see then just some attacks into base here, and a seasoned shore trooper hitting the field. So now it looks like 13 damage has been inflicted on Boba's base, while only 12 damage is on Krennic's base. So Krennic really taking the lead here, and unfortunately for Daniel, it seems like there are some resources there that he wasn't able to make use of this turn. Dawid up to 9 resources here. Let's see what Daniel might be able to do to try and get out of this predicament. So now that the cell block guard is down, he ambushes in with Rook, and defeats Vader, absorbing the retaliation damage on his shield. So Rook has an on-attack ability that allows you to immediately defeat enemy units. So the way this works in particular is on attack, it's something like when this unit deals combat damage, as an attacker, defeat to the defending unit, defeat the defending unit. I don't know the exact phrasing, but it's something like that. So essentially, Rook has an ability that allows him to attack and defeat more or less anything as long as he can get any damage through. Now, if the target is shielded and Rook doesn't actually hit, they are not defeated. But yeah. So then looks like the seasoned Trooper swings for 4. Daniel activates Fett's Fire Spray's exhaust effect, not a commonly used ability, but one that's very useful here, exhausting the Death Trooper to prevent a swing. Dawid plays an Avenger. Fett's Fire Spray swings into base for 5. Dawid takes the initiative, threatening to attack the base and win with the Avenger, only to have No Good to Me Dead played on it, preventing it from readying at the end of the turn. And looking at the life totals, we have 17 HP or 17 damage for Dawid's base, leaving him at 8, and 17 damage, leaving Daniel at 8 as well. Dawid has a Vanquish, taking down the Fett's Fire Spray here. Daniel plays Vader and is going for a big ambush here. Now, as Dawid, you could actually just take the initiative at this point because Avenger is lethal and Daniel does not have very many resources. But because he gets to trigger Boba's ability and ready a resource, he does now have 2, which means there is a threat that he would have another copy of No Good to Me Dead in hand, and then be able to use that to suppress Avenger for another turn, and you would miss out on getting value out of your resources. Now, it does look like there was a surprise strike in hand for Daniel, so Dawid having drawn that Vanquish was really useful. In fact, if he had not had that Vanquish, I think he would have lost the game to Fett's Fire Spray Surprise Strike for exact 8. It looks like Vader chose to take out Krennic, a pretty reasonable choice, as Daniel wants to keep Dawid's base unhealed and therefore in the danger zone. The seasoned shore trooper defeats Vader. Daniel takes initiative, and then we see the Death Trooper swing into the base. So we're now looking at, it looks like Daniel's base has taken 20 damage. At this point, he needs to have some way to kill or take control of Avenger. So Change of Heart here is really good. He could have Entrenched, but that's out of aspect. He does have the Change of Heart, taking control of Avenger and now threatening lethal against Dawid's base instead. So if this Avenger gets a chance to swing, Daniel will win the game, I believe. Dawid is not going to have a surprise strike of his own in those aspects, though I believe if he had a Snow Trooper Lieutenant, he could win with his Death Trooper. He's drawn another Vanquish, though, and it allows him to defeat his own Avenger, so that Change of Heart is still really big value for Daniel, but it's not an overall favorable scenario. So now we see Now we see, and when I say it's not an overall favorable scenario, I mean Daniel is still in big trouble despite threatening lethal again. Dawid had the out. We do see No Good to Me Dead exhausting the Consortium Star Viper for 2 turns. Boba Disintegrator kills the Death Trooper after the Death Trooper hits the base. Um, I think Daniel has now only 2 HP remaining. Dawid plays Inferno 4, threatening a 2 damage attack on the next turn. And we will see what happens here. I think Daniel takes initiative, and we're on to the next turn. So he needs to stop that Inferno 4 because even that weak 2 damage attack would be enough to close out the game for Dawid, with Daniel's base this severely damaged. Of course, David's base isn't exactly in a great shape itself. He only has only having 8 HP. And I think there is, if there's still a surprise strike in hand, this could actually be lethal. With Inferno 4, Boba, and a surprise strike, that actually could be enough damage to close the game. Will Daniel be able to pull victory out of the jaws of defeat here and get the win? This will be the 3rd time that he's threatening lethal. In order to survive this, I think Dawid will need to use his at least I think he has 2 copies of Make an Opening in hand, and the healing and reduced damage there could save him. But interestingly, Daniel actually opts to have Inferno 4 attack into the Star Viper. He's not trying to get lethal here. He gets a resource back. I wonder what he's going for here. And there we see the Make an Opening, healing Dawid's base and debuffing Boba Disintegrator. Looks like maybe initiative taken there, hoping for. Oh, I think maybe he was hoping for a barrage, but with Gideon Hask, it's not going to work. An overwhelming barrage only does 5 damage. Yeah, he has it. He can do 5 damage, but he can't deal the 6 damage he would need to clear both those units. So there we have the handshake, and Dawid wins this game. That was an interesting game. You know, Daniel was at a disadvantage after that incredibly brutal double power of the dark side turn, clearing not just Boba but also the Steadfast Battalion. That was an incredibly rough turn for Daniel, but he managed to keep keep fighting. Play on bravely, and he actually threatened lethal, I think, 3 different times that game, only to have Dawid have an out each time. So the first time was Fett's Fire Spray plus Surprise Strike could have won, but it was vanquished. The second time was Change of Heart on the Avenger, but it was vanquished. And then the third time was the potential lethal from Change of Heart on the on Inferno 4 plus Boba Disintegrator if he still had the surprise strike, though he ended up not trying for it. It's possible he had actually resourced the surprise strike or similar. Okay, so that was the round 1 of the Super Showdown Poznan, and yeah, very cool stuff. So ultimately a win for Command Krennic over Command Boba. And I'm going to be doing some more videos covering some of the other games from this tournament. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.